Welcome, everybody. The college football season is approaching, which means it's time for college football preseason content. I'm Joe with the Game House. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the top 5 contenders for the college football playoff. All right, so the top 5 contenders for the college football playoff is what we're going to talk about today. This will kind of read and kind of be a video similar to my preseason top 25, but we're going to focus a little bit more on these specific teams who I think are at the top of the list to make the college football playoff. Obviously, there's 5 teams here, only 4 spots, so not everyone's going to make it, but just guys or teams to look out for this year. We see that sometimes some of the dark horse contenders to make the playoff do make the playoff, but a lot of times it's a lot of the favorites. It's just a matter of what order they're in. That's been one of the complaints about the college football playoff over its 10 years. So let's get started here. Let's start with USC. Pac-12 championship win away from the college football playoff last year. They most definitely would have been in. Could redeem themselves this year. Caleb Williams back at quarterback, won the Heisman. He's going to need his offensive line to step up, but the skill position players are set. You got Dorian Singer transferring in from Arizona, Marshawn Lloyd transferring in from South Carolina. They hit the transfer portal up to fix the defense, and they still almost made the playoff with that defense being pretty bad last year. Now you go to Georgia and get Bear Alexander, who has some issues. Apparently, that's why Georgia fans think he left, and USC wants him because he's a talented player. We'll see how that works out. But they hit the transfer portal hard to fix that defense. We're just going to see how they do. If they can go through that grueling Pac-12 schedule and only have one loss and win the Pac-12 championship they can be in, that's a lot to ask for. So they play Notre Dame and Oregon on the road. At home, they have matchups against Utah and Washington. They need to, again, get out of the season with only one loss. That could be to any of these teams, really, but they have to make sure they ranked higher. The reason why I'm going with USC, a lot of people, I believe Lindy's has them ranked 10th instead of 5. I have them as the 5th best team in the country, and the reason being, I think Caleb Williams is that good. I think he can really lead this offense. The defense in the Pac-12 not being as good doesn't matter as much as other conferences, and they just have to be timely for this offense to be successful, for this team to be successful. They can do it. If they almost did it last year, they just need to come through a little bit more. And as they hit the transfer portal, I think they can do it. All right, number 4, Alabama Crimson Tide. They missed the CFP for the second time in 4 seasons in 2022. They returned just 9 starters, but they always reload, and you never want to count out Nick Saban. Jalen Milroe will probably step in at quarterback. They also have Tyler Buckner if he doesn't work out, who has familiarity with new offensive coordinator Tommy Rees. That's very, very good. On defense, they have some stars returning, which is good because they don't have the talent returning, at least at every position, as at least experienced talent returning. Edge rusher Dallas Turner is very, very good, plays with an edge. He's recently said that he wants to play murder ball in the SEC. That sounds like a lot of fun to watch, not a lot of fun to go through. And then cornerback Kool-Aid McKinstry, one of the best names in college football and also one of the best corners in college football, could really help them out. Alabama was not in the CFP last year. They got 11 wins. They won the Sugar Bowl against Kansas State last year. They lost the games by a couple points. I know there was a lot of lobbying to get them in because they thought they were one of the best teams based on gambling odds and everything. End of the day, they have to only get out throughout the season with one loss. That's how this whole system has gone through for the entirety. Is you can be a power conference team, make the college football playoff, but you can only have one loss. So that's what That's what we're operating on right now. The playoff is expanding next year, so this will all change. They host Texas, Ole Miss, Arkansas, Tennessee, and LSU. Tough road test at Texas A&M and Arkansas. That's a pretty hefty schedule for Alabama. They should be favored in most of these games. I think, on the road, Texas A&M could be tricky for them. It's been a tricky game for them in the past. Not saying they should be favored, but just a tricky game they've had in the past. LSU game's always tricky. Lost that one last year, but now they get it at home. So if they could just escape with the one loss, I think they can still be in the playoff even if they don't make the SEC championship. If LSU's in there too, it's going to create all these scenarios like it did last year, where LSU gets in the SEC championship game, but they maybe aren't good enough resume-wise to get in the college football playoff. So this is a tough thing to forecast this year because I do think Alabama has enough talent on the roster to get the job done, and the schedule, I think they can just get out with one loss. But they have a new quarterback. They'll need to see how that goes. We're just trusting a lot in Nick Saban here, that his recruiting has panned out, that his coaching will pan out too. Ohio State, they made the college football playoff last year after losing to Michigan in the final game of the regular season and sitting out that Big Ten championship. Bring back 12 starters. Kyle McCord is set to take over at quarterback. His success could be what gets them there or gets them out of the college football playoff. They return players like Marvin Harrison Jr., Travion Henderson. The offense is pretty stacked. They do have to replace their tackles from last year, but have some offensive line talent returning. Defense also has some players who can help us in the impact. Defensive line is stacked with players who can be really good players. And then cornerback Denzel Burke can really help them too. They need to work on limiting big plays in big games specifically to be able to win some of the games. Despite losing to Michigan last year, they made the college football playoff. They almost beat Georgia. They're a team that they might struggle against some of these, I would say, run-first offenses like Michigan was last year. But when they match up against some of these SEC teams, they have the athleticism and talent to match up. They have tough home games against Penn State, Michigan State, road games at Notre Dame, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Again, no, you have to get out of here with only one loss. The one loss this year pretty much has to be Michigan State or Penn State, and they have to make sure that they can still wiggle their way in there. It could be that we have more undefeated teams this year. I would say we're set for some chaos because we have some good teams at the top of the Big Ten. We have some good teams at the top of the Pac-12 that'll be battling it out. We just talked about USC. Ohio State's there, and then Michigan we're going to get to in a second too. So if Kyle McCord pans out, maybe they make the playoff for the second straight year, even without having to beat Michigan. We know they want to beat their rivals, though, so that's something they'll have to take into account. Michigan's at number 2. 2 straight CFP appearances, 2 straight wins over Ohio State. That was the big bugaboo for Jim Harbaugh. 15 returning starters is important. They returned Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards in terms of running backs, and that's how their offense gets going, is through the running game. J.J. McCarthy returns a quarterback. He needs to make more of those big-time throws, as mentioned in the article here. Defense ranked 7th in the country last season. Good returning talent at linebacker specifically. They made their second straight CFP, but when they get there, they haven't been winning. That's something they need to address because on paper, they were a better team than TCU. They should have been able to get the job done. I think they have the talent to get back to the CFP. Tough road games, Michigan State and Penn State. They have Ohio State. They're going to get them at home, though. Again, get out of the season with just one loss. Michigan and Ohio State can both make the playoff again this year if they get out with one loss, and it's, Penn State's out of the equation. I don't think you can have 3 one-loss teams and maybe have 2 of them get in. It would be a little bit tougher with that because you got to leave someone out. But and also other teams can go undefeated. But getting out with one loss is the most important thing. I know everyone wants to beat Ohio State. If they go undefeated like they did last year, they're definitely in, and that's fine. But just make sure you only have one loss. All right, Georgia, number 1. Can Georgia complete a three-peat? They are the two-time national champions back-to-back. 13 returning starters, 7 on defense, which is important for their defense because they're very, very good on defense. They need a new quarterback to emerge, but they also just won the national championship 2 straight years with Stetson Bennett, who was not a heralded quarterback. They have Brock Bowers back at tight end. Defense ranked 5th nationally, 7 returning starters. Lots of talented players there. It's hard to repeat as champions. They're trying to do it for a 3rd straight year. That makes it even tougher. The good news for them is their schedule is ridiculously easy in terms of how other teams kind of see it. They have tough road games against Auburn and Tennessee, neutral site game against Florida like they do every year, and then the tough tests at home could be Ole Miss, South Carolina, or Kentucky. That's not the biggest names. That's just kind of the toughest test they could face at home. Georgia should be able to handle their business. I think, again, finishing with 1 or less losses is what you need to do. They are the favorites in the East if they can get past Tennessee. They are in the SEC championship game. If they're undefeated at that point and lose the SEC championship game, they could still get in it. So that's the name of the game. Get out with 1 loss. And for these teams here, it's going to be hard for me. I know the top 4 contenders are 2 Big Ten, 2 SEC. That's how the sport is going in the future too. We know that. Big Ten, SEC keep on adding teams to it. But I think this is how it could be at the end of the day. If USC doesn't run the table, you're putting a 1-loss USC against a 1-loss Ohio State or a 1-loss Michigan, hypothetically speaking, obviously. That's how it could go down. So I hope we get chaos. I hope we get a bunch of 2-loss teams who are into consideration. That just hasn't happened in the college football playoff era. That would be what I would say would be most ideal and probably most likely for this year because you have the top teams at the top of the Pac-12, the top of the Big Ten, even the top of the SEC with LSU, Alabama, and Georgia, and even Tennessee too. So it could be a wild and crazy year. These are just my top 5 contenders. We'll see what happens. Maybe I'll get all of them right. Maybe I'll get none of them right. We'll have to see what happens here. Let me know who your top contenders for the college football playoff are. For now, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time.